Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Laurentian Valley Special Council meeting on November 9th to do our second round of the budget. Charlene, please call to order. Mover and seconder. Alan and Keith.
Okay, moved by Councillor Wren, seconded by Councillor Watt, that the special council meeting of November 9th, 2021 be called to order at 5:34 p.m.
All in favor? Carried. Roll call, please, Charlene.
I'm used to this. Okay, I'll call the roll. Mayor Bennett.
Present.
Reeve Robinson.
Present.
Councillor Gauthier-Keel.
Present.
Councillor Hughley.
Present.
Councillor Plow.
Present.
Councillor Watt.
Present.
Councillor Wren.
Present.
All accounted for. Mayor.
Confirmation of the agenda. Mover and seconder. Jennifer and Chris.
Moved by Councillor Gauthier-Keel, seconded by Councillor Plow, that the agenda of the special council meeting of November 9th, 2021 be approved as presented.
All in favor? Carried. And we'll turn it over to you, Charlene. You have the floor.
Okay, let's see if we can do this. Screen. Okay, just a second. I'll figure this out. Sorry, guys.
That's all right. Take your time.
It's confusing. If you saw my desk, there's 3 computers. Okay, so which screen do you see?
We see
Laurentian
you.
Valley operating budget.
Awesome. Okay. So obviously we're here for the operating and the capital budgets. And if I can get my mouse, there we go. So I just wanted you to note the following steps have been completed. We've reviewed with all department heads. I've reviewed with the mayor, the chair of corporate services, and the CAO. An additional review with department heads as needed has been completed. And I just wanted to make a note as well that actuals are to November 5th, 2021 and should not be considered in budget deliberations. And therefore, I know it's difficult not to ask questions about actuals to date, but there are a lot of invoices, especially in public works, that has not, both in operating and in capital, that have not been received yet and may not be received until the end of the year. So we would appreciate those questions not coming forward at this time unless you have a burning desire for those questions to be answered. So we'll start with all capital funded revenue has been excluded at this time. Some have not been confirmed and therefore do not form part of the budget. So items like federal gas tax, OSIF, where we would normally receive that information, it is coming out shortly. I'm anticipating because they have approved the OSIP funding. We just haven't got notice exactly how much we're going to get. But those things all fund capital and are not operating related. So as well, in the operating package that I sent you, the capital projects are not included in the operating budget. Borrowing for those capital projects, if there is any, is not included as well. Changes have been reflected according to actuals in the operating budgets. If we know that something is going on, that should be reflected closer to actuals or the 3-year average, then we've accommodated those changes. So revenue highlights. So one of the items that we did receive was the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, the UMF, has increased for 2022 by $4,100 over 2021, but it is still $626,800 less than 2009. So I just wanted to bring that highlight to you so that it is creeping up each year, but it's nowhere near what we used to get even as far back as 2013, 12, but definitely not 2009. This affects directly into our operating. So transfers from reserves. So the amounts that are in the reserves in your operating budget, the landfill offsets the expense in the operating budget, so in the expenses. The election transfer offsets the election expenses that we have every year during an election, and next year will be an election. So the planning, $40,000 transfer offsets the official plan expenses carried over from this year, 2021. Now it's anticipated that it may be only 38,000, but then we'll only spend 38,000. So it'll be, whether it's 40,000 or 38,000 at this time, the expense and that revenue match. So there's no impact to the overall levy increase. CIP offsets expenses carried over from the 2021 budget. So right now, I think in the expenses, we're sitting at about 26,000 to date. However, we anticipate that will go up. So I think I've put in for the revenue, I think it's 25,000 transfer from reserves. And that will offset, 15,000 I'm anticipating. And that will offset carryover from CIP expenses approved this year, but not funded until next year. Then we go into the highlights for revenue. So the fees, so all fees have increased in the following due to demand. So the building inspection obviously has gone up. So we've reflected a slight increase in building inspection and an increase in planning as well, because we're seeing more planning fees come in. Vehicle and equipment sales. It's based on the replacements of vehicles and all funds to be transferred into appropriate reserves. So right now, if we're receiving, I think I have for fire and for public works. So fire transfer to reserves will be what I've budgeted for in the vehicles and equipment sales. I should bring this up so that I see exactly what it is. I think it's, so for fire vehicles is 35,000. And that's why you'll see transfers to reserves in the expense area. You'll see 85,000 because normally we transfer 50, and I'm including the additional 30,000 into reserves as well. So whatever we get for those vehicle sales, the same goes for public works. Whatever vehicle sales we will have, I've anticipated that we'll get $5,000 as a truck, that like a half ton. We might get $5,000 for it. Whatever it is also transferred into reserves as well. Now the per capita royalty fees. There isn't in each year, those per capita royalty fees are based on CPI increases as well as assessment, due to the fact that the assessment is not going to change unless there was a change to the property, a building went up, or a sale occurred and they've found an increase in assessment with regards to what it was, but it's based on 2016 values. So it's not necessarily going to go up to what the value was at the date of the sale, but what it was valued. So if there was a garage there that wasn't noticed prior, then they're going to pick up that garage. Or if there's something that they missed in the 2016 assessment, reassessment over the 4 years, 17, 18, 19, and 20, then they'll pick that up and you'll see an increase in assessment for there. So I've also taken into consideration the CPI, which affects the rates that we recharge the municipalities that are partners in the Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery Center, and those fees get increased. So I've increased this according to that. there any questions so far with those items? I can't see everybody, so.
No, I can see Charlene, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a few fee decreases. The lottery license, I did decrease the lottery license a little bit due to the impact of COVID, and I'm unsure of what kind of fundraising will return at Bingo Country. Municipal drainage, no maintenance on any drains to be collected from this year. There was no maintenance done on municipal drains, so therefore we don't have to collect it through the taxation for those that are benefited from those municipal drains. Any other questions on revenue before we go into expenses? Seeing none. Okay. So all salaries have been increased by 3.5% to reflect anticipated October CPI. I just wanted you to note that September CPI was 4.4. I didn't budget that high, but I have budgeted 3.5. I anticipate that it is still going to be high. So I've budgeted all those salaries. All conferences and training registration and expenses have been budgeted back to normal budget numbers in anticipation to return to normal. All insurance costs have been budgeted at an anticipated 20% increase based on 2021 actuals by line item. So you'll see some of the line items where the budget was different than I anticipated for 2021, but I went by the 2021 actuals because we're finished paying for insurance for the year. We usually pay that in March at the latest. So an RFP is to be issued in 2022, just so you know. The market for insurance has drastically gone up for all municipalities, and it's also based on our experience rating as well. So that's what we're seeing right now. Haven't got a clear quote, but that's what I was basically quoted without actually having any numbers for 2022. Transfer to reserves are based on normal activities. So as an example, the capital reinvestment is based on the 1%. So all those transfers to reserves are based on what we normally transfer to reserves every year. So fixed assets, we always transfer 150,000. Vehicle and equipment, we transfer the 150,000. So we're transferring an additional 5. Development charges are an in and out, and I've highlighted those on your sheets, and I've kind of put a number to them where they are associated with in the revenue areas so that you can easily identify those. Recreation, again, 25,000. Election, this will be the first year for the next election. So we use 4 years of $8,800 and then transfer that amount into operating to offset the actual election in the 4th year, which is next year. All administration and IT contracted services have been reviewed and budgeted according to actual requirements. So we have a number of contracted services with our postage machine, our folder stuffer, our photocopiers, those types of things. Those are all budgeted for in our IT. All that's been budgeted for is our annual rates that are paid for all of our software.
Charlene Allen has a question, please.
Okay.
So Charlene, just on insurance for vehicles and equipment, we're looking at a 3-year average of just around $12,000. In 2020, we were at 18,000, and then we went to 50,000. Now we're going to 60,000.
Yeah. So if you take your actual 50,717.32, multiply it and add it 20%. That's why I said. So I've taken our increase from last year, and if you will notice that we were affected last year by vehicle insurance from our experience, as well as Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery Center's experience is included in our experience. And that's why it went up from what I had budgeted, 22,000, to which was more along the line of actual 2020,
Right.
with a 25% increase at the time. But because vehicles And equipment licenses did drastically doubled. And there was a reason for that for a number of items. And that's why I'm going through it line by line, like not line by line, but section by section. But I just wanted those ones that are all over the place. The insurance costs are one, your salaries are another. That's what I've done for each of those sections. So vehicles and equipment, it's definitely 20% on top of what the actual was in 2021.
No, I get it, but that was a huge increase just from 2020 to 2021, and now another $10,000 on top of that. It's when do we go out for quotes on our insurance again?
Next year. So RFP to be issued in 2022, as indicated.
Thank you. Yep.
Welcome. Any other questions on those items?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so all in and outs have been budgeted both in revenue and expenses and have no effect in the overall budget. So whether or not the 3-year average is 10,000 and I've budgeted 20, I've budgeted 20 in both areas. So there's, or 5 in both areas. So it's an in and out, doesn't affect. I could budget 0. There is no impact on the overall budget. I've budgeted for the addition of the building inspector. It has been added both in salary as well as in training to reflect that for next year. And then we get into the different areas. So if we go to administration, so the studies, even though there was a budgeted amount last year of 190,000, we in the capital from last year, some of it was done, some of it hasn't been done and is being carried over into this year. But I've included it on your capital spreadsheet and not in operating because it's funded by reserves. So I haven't included it here. And that's why you'll see the difference there. Any questions in administration?
Debbie, go ahead.
Thank you. Can you give me that, because the definition that we're using for capital as opposed to operating, because I'm trying to figure out how a study is a capital expenditure.
Well, sometimes it has a direct relation to capital and sometimes it doesn't, but I'm trying to put the bigger ticket items because it is something that does fluctuate year over year. Some years we'll have studies, some years we won't. And that's why I'm trying to leave operating as something that doesn't fluctuate so drastically. And studies is one of those ones that, like, we're not going to do a recreation study next year because we've already done one this year. So that is something that I've taken into consideration. It's not necessarily capital per se. Sometimes it is, sometimes it actually isn't. And these studies are not capital, but it's an anomaly. So I've just kind of segregated them off onto the capital sheet. Does that help?
I understand why you're doing it. I just find it rather confusing. I see capital as something different than a study. But
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And we could have a study sheet and have it separate from the capital if that's what you wish going forward into the next budget.
Al, go ahead.
So you can take high ticket items and class them as a capital project, and that's generally what people do based on if it's a high ticket item, they consider that as a capital project because of the price of it.
Typically, capital is something that you feel or touch, or it's not something something that's tangible, not something that's in words. And I agree, but I do like it being segregated so that it isn't included in the overall operating because it's not happening every year. Again, I could do a separate sheet that says studies, just so that it doesn't show up in operating.
Well, we'll have the discussion later on when we get to capital regarding the East End study anyways with council, so we could have the discussion then.
Okay. So information systems, really, there's nothing there. It is the contracted services, and I've addressed that. Fire protection overall budget is reduced. The overall budget operating is reduced by $7,005. And of course, you don't really see that because the capital is in there for the budget 2021. But when you subtract the capital, it has decreased. OPP has been reduced in 2022 by $11,824. And bylaw enforcement has been budgeted closer to actual.
Charlene, I noticed that the city of Pembroke got their rebate from OPP already. Did we get any type of rebate from OPP this year?
I believe so. I believe we have received it.
Okay.
And I'll hopefully be doing a report for OPP costs, not next meeting, but in December, I'm hoping.
Okay. Thank you.
Emergency management. So obviously, when we look at 3-year average, it's high because of the emergency that happened in 2019. So it's based on no emergency occurring in 2022. So I'm really hoping there's nothing, and let's hope for that. Animal control is budgeted closer to the 3-year average because now we're probably 3 years in with the new animal control, and it's been reduced accordingly. Planning, if open, and this is where I said the official plan, the planning budget that was 40,000. If it's not completed in 2021, whatever funds are left over will be transferred into reserves for planning. We set that reserve up last year, and it will be shown as coming out. So again, it won't have an impact. Community benefits charge study. It was in there. No, I don't, for 2021, and you will see that there was no expenses. So it was to be included, and it has been included in the overall recreation study. And this was something separate that we thought was going to be separate from the recreation study, but has been included in the overall RFP for 60,000. So there is no additional cost for that this year. Highlights for development charges, economic development based on a 3-year average. That's a cost, and some of those costs as well are picked up in community development budget as well. Community development events anticipated to return to normal, and that's where you're going to see a little an increase there. Katie went over the budget before she went on maternity leave with me, and has a number of events planned for next year for Dan and Nevada to run. And when she comes back, obviously she'll be fully involved in those as well. Print materials, some of them are created, and once they're printed and distributed so that we can have them on hand to hand out, there'll be expenses. Website will continue to be updated. Katie's working on that all the time, and it looks great. We've had lots of compliments on our website, but there is still lots of work to occur there, including accessibility and a number of issues. So it will move forward. Then we go into public works. So public works, so the asphalt sweeping, the intent is to add more urban streets for the sweeping, shoulder maintenance, guidepost replacements. Gravel is an additional new grader blades to be on hand. As they wear out, then we can actually have them on hand and not have to wait for them, so we can keep the grader moving. Curb and gutter, there's TV tower repairs, TV tower road repairs, not the TV tower. Urban storm piping repairs at different locations, and rural storm ditching works and culvert replacements in different locations. So those budgets, urban and rural, has gone up, but there is anticipated that there will be a number of projects on the go. And again, just in case anybody asks, the actuals that Mark has assured me that we're probably going to be close to over budget in those areas. We're just waiting on invoices.
Shirley, just a question for Mark on the communications. Mark, is that continuously upgrading in our trucks or?
So the change in the communications is we previously had our AVL or GPS system into a two-way radio system or a combined system. Unfortunately, the GPS component did not work properly. So we had money budgeted for 2020 to upgrade and due to COVID, some of the parts didn't arrive until 2021, so that put us slightly over budget. So the increased cost would be the monthly fees for the two systems now. So it's slight increase over where they were before, but the budget overage for 2021 is due to some of the additional equipment that didn't arrive in time in 2020 to be installed.
Okay. I guess my only other question under Public Works Administration was the debt charges and interest. That's obviously the building, correct? No? The 253 and 143, Charlene? Debt charges, principal, debt charges, that's for the building?
The debt charges? Yes. So those are the any debt that's associated with. So the additional one is for Golf Course Road that we've added this year for next year, as well as any of the expenses for the building. So any road debt, any building debt, that all gets charged to Public Works debt.
So that's why it's more than doubled from the actual 2020 because of Golf Course Road? So actual 20 is 116, budget this year is 253.
Right. So in the end of 2020, I'm trying to think, but it has doubled from the actual. But if you look at, I anticipated that in 2021, we were going to have some of Golf Course paid in 2021. We won't. We will have, but 253 and 143 will be two payments on Golf Course Road for the 2022. There was no one payment in 2021.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay.
Any other questions there, folks? Debbie, and then Alan.
Sorry, I just some clarification about how we're doing this. So Charlene's going through the highlights, but are we going back then to each section to see if we have questions in the various sections? Is that the intent? Because I certainly have some questions.
I think she's kind of been going through every section. If you had a question in that section, you could ask. So
I did not understand that. I thought we were getting the highlights and then we were going to go back section by section. So
My hope is not to go line by line. I'm trying to explain it as we go. But so if you have any questions other than actuals from 2021.
okay, I apologize because that's not how what I thought was happening, that I thought we would go back and go through, not necessarily line by line, but section by section if we had questions.
So why don't we continue on and you can start asking questions section by section. We'll go back to where we've gone through already. So in the Public Works Administration, in this first line item, or the first total of 1.46, 1,406,000. Any questions on that area? No? Okay. So continue on to capital projects, Charlene?
Well,
Next section.
capital will be at the end. So you'll see that none of the capital has been budgeted for, as we'll deal with that as a separate presentation, a separate. So I've gone through the next 6 sections. Is there any questions on those? Councillor Rowe?
Alan? Sorry, Alan, I missed your hand there in the corner.
No, that's fine. I have a couple of questions, and I think I have this one every year, and this is for Mark. The asphalt contracted services, and I think you're going to tell me that that's going to be grinding of asphalt. Is that correct? Because it seems to have, we're now up to 60,000 from 30, so that's kind of doubled.
Yeah, Councillor Wren, part of that is our line painting included in there, and that's probably the biggest contributor. We previously only painted 50% of the roads annually, but due to the latex painting roads essentially every second year isn't working. So we're about $35,000 just for line painting. So that's progressive stop bars and all of our center line, where we were only in, I'll say, the 15,000 range, but we've doubled that to 30 for the line painting. And then we're in the $5,000 range to annually touch up the progressive stop bars that have been added. And also this year, there's a pretty large outstanding invoice in this one, even though we're close to being at budget, is we've had a couple culverts fail. And so these are the asphalt patches over top of those culverts, and they're ranging between $6,000 and $8,000 each. So, and we did have a couple of culverts that did collapse this year. Nothing catastrophic, just some small ones that were falling in. But this is kind of the asphalt component of the maintenance.
Okay, so then my other question would be in urban storm and rural storm. And we've now increased the contracted services in both of those areas to 75,000 each. Will you give us a list of where those are going? Because this is just under drains, I'm assuming. It's not the filling in of ditches. And if we're still looking at filling in some of the ditches, are some of these under drains going to go in and then we're going to go back and do more work there later on?
Yeah, so the two numbers are just basically dealing with what's there now. So JP2G is still completing the study, and I'll speak to the CAO when he's back about the study for that infilling of the ditches. But we do have a pretty detailed list already compiled from staff for both the urban and rural storm. The rural storm is essentially, again, changing some road cross culverts that we've identified some problems with next year, as well as several ditching projects. For the urban areas, it's dealing with problems with some of the existing storm sewers that are in place. There's several in Stafford built up area. There's still a few places we're dealing with in the drive-in road area where things are failing. We also have on our list is the storm sewer in the fire hall parking lot. There's a catch basin there, and we're having some problems with it. So we do have a complete list. I could, if council does want kind of our proposal list for 2022, I can share that, just kind of where the projects are. And as always, there's things that pop up in the spring. We've had excessive water perhaps in an area and a storm sewer, or we end up with a new ditching issue. So we can address those as well. But we do have a fairly detailed preliminary list for next year.
Yeah, I just say, like, when we're going for example, in urban storm, we're going from 12,600 to 75,000. That's a huge jump. And then in rural storm, we're going from, I'm back in 2020 because I'm not looking at 2021. We're going from 17,700 to 75,000. Both of those are huge jumps. So just when we see those huge jumps, it'd be nice to know like what they related to.
Exactly. Yeah. So what I'll do, I'll make a list and of the locations, and I'll share that with council just so they're aware of where we're proposing to do the works next year.
Great. Thank you.
Brian, go ahead.
Just to back up there, you're talking about the increase in contracted services with regards to painting being because the latex paint isn't standing up. Is it mandated that you have to use latex, or why did you switch to an inferior product that's not lasting as long as it used to?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's mandated that they're not allowed to use oil-based paints anymore, and it has to be a latex or a water-based paint. So everyone's kind of experiencing the same issue. Provincial highways, they put on an extremely heavy application, so there's some more durability there. But the county and Renfrew other road authorities, we're all experiencing the same issues where the lines just over the last few years, they just haven't held up as they have previously.
Now, latex has come a long way. There's nothing that comes close to the old
No, not yet. Something we did try this year, and it was the first time on all of our new road construction projects. We actually put 2 layers of paint on. So the contractor came in, did initial painting, came back in a couple of weeks and repainted, because it's the first layer does absorb into the new asphalt. So we have tried that to see if we'll get some more durability out of it, because we have found, even over the course of the winter, the new paint markings are almost completely gone. So the thing we're trying to avoid is having the contractor, if we do it every second year, and if we can't get a better quality or better job with the paint, is having them have to go through the expense of pre-marking to, I'll say, redefine the center line of the road to repaint. And that has been the complaint over the last couple of years on the ones that we're doing every second year, is that they're having a lot of difficulty just even trying to locate that center of the road. So I will talk to a couple of the paint companies. This is a cooperative tender that we do with the County of Renfrew, but they do deal with us directly. So I can ask some questions on paint qualities. Maybe it's a heavier application, and maybe instead of 100% increase, maybe we can get away with a heavier paint application, still doing every second year. Maybe it's a 50% increase. So I could ask some of those questions. I'm just not sure how much they'd commit themselves, because again, winter maintenance, the amount of sand we use on the road, that abrasion, eats at the paint as well. So I don't know how much they could guarantee, but I could at least ask those questions.
Okay.
Okay, so any other questions in this section here that we're looking at right now? Okay, if not, Charlene, we can move on to your next.
Okay, so now we go into signage. Signage is budgeted closer to actual. Mow and weed spray is anticipated mowing of easements next year. Debris pickup reflects that the students are picking up garbage, and an intersection light. So we've combined those with street lights. So we're having one section of expenses for street lights and intersection lights, as it doesn't quite matter anymore. We're not collecting street light funds anymore through taxation. So it's all been included in one section in street lights. Any questions on those areas?
Yep, go ahead, Charlene.
Okay. What's that? So now we're in. Why is this? My list of people keeps moving. There we go. So now we go into snow plowing. It's reduced closer to the 3-year average. Your sanding and salting is reduced closer to 3-year average, and reduction of use of salt overall. Culvert thawing is increased based on anticipated activity. You'll see in 2021, we had a larger activity than normal, and same as in 2018. So we're anticipating that it'll be closer to the 3-year average as well.
Alan?
So again, a question for Mark. And I know that we decided as a council to do a parking lot contract, and that is out now. Do we anticipate seeing an offset in savings somewhere from that, Mark? Because that was work that our guys were doing with our equipment. I understand that part of the savings was that one truck, and just wondering if you see where there'd be an offset for that $46,000 expense. Kind of looking to see if we made the right decision. I know it's early. We have to wait to go through a year first to see if we made the right decision, or should we be looking at that again and maybe bringing it back in-house, or are we going to leave it as a contract?
Yeah. So right now what we've done is we have lowered salaries. That's, I think the first expense, wear and tear on vehicles and maintenance, and also on the materials. But I think our largest is going to be the salaries, as a lot of times the parking lots were done at the end of the day or perhaps the next day. So the money was being spent that way. The idea is as well, instead of the township staff looking after parking lots, they can be maintaining their truck, patching holes. There's other activities that sometimes, get put off in the winter when we're focusing on the parking lots. It also changes things for our operations foreman through minimum maintenance standards. There weren't to be doing other activities aside from the patrolling. And as part of the route, the foreman was actually plowing various parking lots as part of that. So we are actually also adding some liability to us. And as well, we always called in a casual operator for every winter event to take the backhoe out to clear parking lots if it was bigger events. So we would have that savings of not calling in the casual operator either. Fuel, there's all those parts of it. I agree. It was this is our first year at it. It's just to see how it works. We've budgeted to continue with that way for next year, because that's sort of, I guess, kind of how we're proceeding right now. If after 2022, we're seeing that things aren't progressing well, then potentially we can look at for 2023, maybe revisiting the idea of another piece of equipment or another truck. So, the long range forecast still looks like not a whole lot of snow. So it's looking very good this year, but this also isn't an average year, right? It is a normal year.
Yeah, no, and that's fine, Mark. And I totally agree with you. The only thing maybe I'd ask, and not to spend a whole bunch of time on it, but this time next year, I'll probably have the same question. And if you just had some quick numbers on it to say, yeah, you know what, this is kind of my guesstimate of what we saved expense-wise, and this is what it costs. So just so that we know that, yes, we made the right decision, or no, maybe we need to have another look at it. That's all I'm asking. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions in that section? No, go ahead, Shirley.
Okay, now I didn't address the vehicles and equipment because overall, other than the insurance, we're down about $5,000. So the insurance is the largest increase there in vehicles and equipment. The airport commission, the fuel project that the airport commission is doing is in the capital projects. And is reflected. This 2022 will be year 5 of the $5,000 donation. So you'll see that disappear maybe next year. Street lights, again, all street lights and intersection lights included in one area moving forward. And that's why you see those nominal increase due to the intersection lights moving over the expenses. Waste management, will be in 2022, the final year of the debenture for the Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery gasification project, but we anticipate that there will be another project coming on in 2025, is it, Steve?
Well, isn't that our debt on the 20-year? Isn't that our last payment in 2022 and
Yes.
our debt? That's
Yes.
what that is. Yeah,
Yes.
okay. So that won't be there next year.
It won't be there
Because
in
it's-
2023. It is the final year next year in 2022.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
So,
Okay. Any questions on those sections? Okay, then we go down to recreation. There's really no changes in the municipal drainage. Recreation is events have returned to normal and therefore are reflected in the budget to return to normal. Recreation associations, capital requests not included in the operating, and Timberline and LV Skating Trail. We're anticipating that a structured association will come forward and they'll be looking after all of their operating costs through a grant process and the donations received at the LV Skating Trail. The library is discounted. The discounted agreement of $25,000 per year ends in 2022. So therefore, what would have been the 2% from 2019 to 20 to 21, it would be $132,600 in 2021. So plus the 2% equals the recreation amount for 2022. The LV grants. So you'll see I didn't create a new grant line item, because I don't know what that association is going to be called, for that are going to look after the Timberline and the LV skating trail. So I've put the $10,000 that we anticipate that's going to be asked from that association to Allison Fraser. However, the check will be written to that committee once formed. It won't be written to the Allison Fraser. And once I know what that committee will be called, then I'll make a line item for them at that time. Is there any questions with regards to those items?
Debbie, then Alan.
Thank you. Charlene, under the library and other cultural, it says other cultural expenses, 5,400 as opposed to the 300. What is that?
5,000 for festival hall seating. Oh, yes. So there was a meeting that occurred at the festival hall that that I was not aware of, that the municipalities agreed to donate if there's a grant being received for the seating at Festival Hall, and our donation would be for $5,000 over 2 years. Now, I'm hoping that we'll be able to, and a report will be coming forward shortly for the $5,000 to come out of 2021 expenses. And then this would be the second $5,000 that was agreed to at the table for 2022. So that's for that, and $400 for any other. So some of the other cultural expenses that we pay for is the attendance of one of our members of our community to attend at the library board, and we pay them a stipend for each meeting that they attend, and that comes out of there. So that's why you'll see the expense over time. So it's 5,400. You're welcome.
That makes cool. Okay, thank you very much.
Alan, you had a question? No?
Yeah, so
And then Brian.
Charlene, you did say that you added the skating trail for the committee for $10,000.
Yes.
And I get that, but the Timberline we're showing nothing at all. Heating, anything.
That's right. So all of those expenses will be covered by the association that is formed. That's what I was told. So right now we don't pay for heating at Allison Fraser. We don't pay for heating at Shady Nook. The actual association pays for those. So my understanding is the Timberline building will be utilizing, that association will be utilizing the Timberline building as well as the skating trail, and will be looking after anything that goes on there, including any rentals that will occur, just like the other two facilities. And they'll be covering those expenses.
Okay.
Brian.
My questions were along the same line in that no expenses were showing for both the Timberline and the skating trail in those areas. And yet capitally, we were looking at dropping $462,000 into that area. And there's nothing showing for revenue from the trail or the Timberline building at all. And when you look at just insurance alone for both Shady Nook and Allison Fraser, it's $14,000 just for the insurance for both those. And I'm thinking that the trail and that club would have at least similar insurance costs, as well as all the other. You don't spend $462,000 without having maintenance requirements down the road for that. So there should be money going into reserves to be able to maintain this, and there should be potential for some revenue coming from that as well to help with that.
So those capital projects will be funded, will only move forward if the grant is approved. The skating trail lighting has been approved, and we're just waiting for Indigenous approval so that we can actually start the program. We can't move ahead unless we have Indigenous approval, which has gone out several times, and we were told one more time before the grant, the Ministry of I don't know who it is, it's Ontario anyways, will allow us to move ahead with that project. They've approved it, but we have to get comments from the Indigenous groups, which so far we've heard nothing, and we've gone out a number of times to all of the Indigenous groups and we haven't heard back from them. So we're trying, but that's 100% funded. So that's the lighting at the trail. So actual electrical works rather than generators, having staff or volunteers go and turn on the generator and shut it off each time being used. And as well as the timberline, it is a project that is only going forward at this time if grants are received, and the grant that was applied for is 100% funded. So until we find out if it's approved, then we don't know what kind of maintenance is moving forward. But again, some of those maintenance costs are covered by the association. Certainly if we're upgrading any capital works, then that'd be offset by us, but we don't know what those are yet.
Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm certainly understand that the grants are covering that. I'm just looking at going forward, and I beat this horse all the time. 80%, I would say, of the users of the trail are not from Laurentian Valley Township, and yet the residents are paying pretty much 100% of all costs for it because the users are paying nothing to use the trail, and every other trail is in the $9 to $16 per visit trail, and they don't have nearly the overhead that we have to be able to maintain it. And I'm just thinking down the road, there's going to be major expenses here. Yes, they're covered with grants now, but there's going to be big expenses, and we need to put something into reserves and have some revenue coming in to be able to maintain this and sustain this down the road.
So I think some of those other trail facilities have actual staff that are paid staff and not volunteers. So our trail is run by volunteers and donations only. So unless we're going to hire staff at an expense, or the association, when formed, is going to hire a staff at expenses and then charge for the use of it and have it staffed at all times, then but that's
I would
something
assume, sorry, Charlene, I would assume once a committee is formed, similar to other groups, that there will be some revenue coming in, whether it's through rentals, the money that is collected for the skating trail, et cetera, the same as everybody else in all the other clubs. So there is revenue coming in. Obviously, if the $360,000 project gets approved, Mark will have to set up before it's approved, it's going to show us how it's going to be maintained down the road before it's approved. And I guess, Charlene, would I assume that if the grant comes through, it'll come back to council before we move forward with it?
I unfortunately was not involved in the application process. I don't know who brought it forward. I don't know who made the decision to bring that particular project forward. So
go ahead, Brian.
Currently, the revenue wouldn't even cover the fuel costs, which are probably buried someplace in public works and the wear and tear on the township equipment. None of that is ever shown in 2000 in revenue. Certainly doesn't buy much gas even these days.
So what we do for water, we do show a revenue from administration from cost to transfer over to water for the water, both at Stafford Park and the LV skating trail, to show that the water users are not paying for all the water because the water is coming from the water system that is a user-based. So yes, it is being covered by all of Laurentian Valley taxpayers at this time.
Mark, are you aware of when the committee will be formed, or how far along are they to be formed?
I'm hoping for December council will bring something back just a little bit more on the structure. I think the idea is, as Charlene has noted, is that the $10,000 would basically be the operating budget for both the Timberline and the trail, similar to what the other recreation groups are. It's ranging up, from some of the smaller ones to $4,000 or $5,000 up to, but almost $35,000. So I think for some of the rec facilities at 10,000, it's on the lower end. And then any revenues, hall rentals, special events, that sort of thing on the trail would help cover heating expenses, new equipment and that sort of thing. It's still knew the idea, and having the addition of the building is a little bit different. But hopefully something we can potentially run a canteen this winter, again, generate, some further revenues. So the idea is the $10,000, which has been going to the skating trail anyway. And typically we haven't been even really coming close to reaching that budget most years. Just again, it's a lot of volunteer work and not so much, paid services. And so that's kind of where we're at. But again, hoping that December would be when some more of the committee structure information would come forward.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Charlene, I have one question on our joint recreation agreement. The $360,000 you have budgeted for 2022. Have we got numbers from the city, or are we 1 year behind on that as far as?
So it's based, 2022 will be based on actuals 2021. And I did get a report yesterday from the city treasurer to date, and it looks like 360 will probably be about right. I think it might be, depending on how capital comes in, I anticipate that it's going to be close to that, yes.
Okay, thank you. So any other questions on what we've just gone through? Seeing none. Okay, so maybe we can go back through.
If Debbie has any other questions, or if anybody else has any other questions on the revenue and expenses.
Okay, Debbie, go ahead, please.
Thank you. And I do apologize, Charlene, for not understanding what was happening. So under the fire protection, I'm not sure why our insurance costs in fire have gone down.
Well, I based it again on actuals for 2021. I know that was the breakdown that I received from the insurance company, that fire was $5,600 instead of the previous year at $20,000. I'm not sure either. It has drastically changed over time, certainly changed from 19 to 20, and then in 2021, the actual. So I'm just associating those costs as they, because they have to provide me a breakdown for each of them. So I've based the 5,600 times 20% and raised it according to the actuals rather than the budget.
All right, thank you. I have one more question, Steve, if I
absolutely.
may.
Go ahead.
Under community development, I know that you noted that Katie was planning a number of events, but when I look at promotions, we've gone from 12,900 down to 7,000. Why would we reduce that line item if we're hoping to have additional events, which I'm assuming we would want to promote?
I can get those answers for you. I don't think Katie's online, but I can try to get those answers for you for the next meeting.
Thanks. It just seems kind of odd. Thank you. That's it, Steve. Thanks.
Now, maybe she had some functions planned for 2021 that were canceled due to COVID. Because she was at 63 the year before and 5,900. Sorry, there's 51 the year in 2020 and hasn't near spent the budget yet. So, anyways, Charlie.
And I think the promotions is more promotion materials. So it's, LV toques or shirts or pens or that kind of stuff rather than advertising, because advertising is a separate amount. And I think we're getting a lot of success through free advertising through our actual website and Facebook rather than actually paying for advertising. We have a huge uptake on Facebook. So it's those types of things. And if there is an actual advertisement for events, That's why she's kind of reduced the advertising a bit, but the promotional items, we do have some promotional items on hand and we will purchase those later. So that's for events that are going to occur that we're going to give Laurentian Valley swag to. But we do have some swag here that will carry over into 2022.
Okay, thanks very much.
So any other questions on what we reviewed before we started taking questions as we went through it? Okay, seeing none. Charlene, this will go to capital.
Well, I just wanted to go through the operating summary. So
Oh, okay,
right now, the operating increase is $157,472, which represents 2.72% levy increase. And that includes your 1% capital reinvestment transfer. And therefore, really, your operating capital increase is only 1.72%. Okay.
Debbie?
I just want to say that's very, very impressive. So congratulations to all the staff for being able to do that.
Thank you. Okay, so now we get into the capital budget. So I just wanted to update council on debt. So we do have a debt per household. So the debt per household for 2021, tax-based only is $1,244.76. Wastewater is $389.88, and water is $90.41 for a total debt, if you had all services, of $1,725.05. Your debt per household anticipated for 2022 is tax base is a little bit down. There's been a little bit of a shift with regards to some of the, I think it's more related to the interest, because as we pay, it's the same amount every year and the interest then gets reduced. And you'll see that reflected. Your wastewater is also reduced and your water is reduced. So overall debt with all services is $1,494.55. And I do have I'm hoping this works. Maybe I have to go over here. Why isn't it going? There we go. I think it'll come up. Oh, I didn't try it here. Interesting. Just to see. Oh, there we go. So do you all see the Adobe? I don't know what you see. Could you help me? Do you see that or not?
Current debenture balance?
Yes, you see that. Good.
Oh, right. I don't see it there.
Okay, so I just wanted to show you. So the 5-year average debt per household that excludes borrowed on behalf of others is $1,105.63. So these are all the debt payments for facilities, roads, Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery Center that we owe them based on that gasification project. What's outstanding at the time. So at the end of 2021, there's an outstanding balance of $111,800 that will be paid in 2022. So at the end of 2022, we'll have no balance moving forward. Wastewater and water, those are the year-end balances. Borrowed on behalf of the Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery Center, they pay us back. Those are those numbers. Borrowed on behalf of the airport as well. So those are currently on the books moving forward.
Questions? Nope. Okay.
I'm really hoping this works. Oh my goodness. Where did we go?
Are we buying everybody Harleys? Is that what you're trying to tell us?
Yeah. Okay, I think we're back up. Reserve update. Reserves have been updated to reflect capital funding to November 5th, 2021. So the capital budget 2022 has been fully funded, utilizing taxation grants borrowing and reserves as outlined on the capital projects budget sheet that you have in front of you. And the efficiency funding balance is 62,425.13. So if anybody would like to see the proposed budget, we can try it and do this again and see what comes up. Or if you want to avoid the craziness, that's okay. Seeing none, I'll move forward then.
Yes.
Yes. You want to see it, or yes, you don't?
Yeah, they want to see it.
Okay. Let's see what happens here. Let's to get this over here. Okay. My links worked before, but they are not working now. Reserves, 2022 proposed reserves. Okay, so your year end is 2021 is as of November 5th, 2021. So that's as if all the projects have been funded as expensed to date. So those would, if we didn't have any other expenses, those would be the balances moving forward. But we all know that is not the case. It also doesn't include what we're getting from the gas tax, as well as OSIF, because I do not know that yet. But the financing is what is budgeted for in the 2022 capital budget process. So even without receiving those funds from federal gas tax and OSIF, we would still end up with a $4.4 million closing balance at the end of 2022. So you'll see there in planning, I'm expecting that we are transferring the $40,000 in. At the end of 2020, we transferred $5,000 in. And that's why you see 45,000 moving forward, 40,000 coming out, leaving that 5,000. Community improvement plans, 16 coming in at the end of 2020. I don't know what's going to come in at the end of 2021 or what's going to go out at the end of 2022 to offset, or during 2022 to offset those costs. So that will be coming forward. And then efficiency funding. These are from the start. We received 642,370. 2019, what we budgeted for the 2020 actuals, what was budgeted for, what was actually used. And again, 2021, what was budgeted for and used. So the master plan for LV recreation I've left in. So at the end of 2021, I anticipate we'll have about 294,000 left. And again, some of those are earmarked for certain things like the East End servicing expansion, the airport fuel dispensing system, and then a couple of the projects that I've put for efficiency funding, the budget software and the culvert condition review as well. So leaving a balance of 62,425. What we have to understand is a lot of the grants are asking whether or not we've spent all this efficiency funding. We have to say yes or no. We've said it's earmarked to be spent. So we need to start ensuring that this money is spent on efficiencies. And while they're saying, well, they said all along that we don't have to report it, but more and more often they're asking for information. So we have to think about how we're going to spend for efficiency services to make things more efficient in our day-to-day lives.
Debbie, you have a question?
Not so much a question as a comment. I think when I look at this list, I think it's very impressive what we've been able to use that money for. Granted, there's still some left, but we do have it allocated. We will have it allocated for the 2022 budget. And the 62,000 that's left, I suspect if we really look close, we may be able to find ways to spend that in 2022 as well.
Yep, for sure. Anything else? Questions on this? Comments? Go ahead, Charlene.
Okay, let's see what's going on here. Oh, this is so frustrating. There we go. Okay, so the capital highlights. You have the projects in front of you. The 2021 projects not completed have been identified and carried over to 2022. All reserve transfers to fund the capital projects are based on actual dollars and not budgeted dollars, so no need to transfer in and then back to reserves. So until those projects in 2021 are complete, that's when the actual number will be transferred unless it's over what we originally budgeted for. And typically in December or January, I bring a report forward from council on those actual numbers once we get the finalized numbers, as well as sometimes even into March once the auditor looks at them, and we put them back into 2021 as an expense in 2021, and then move forward with an opening balance for 2022. You all have the working capital's draft budget. I'll just go through some of the highlights. So information technology. So we have our regular computer replacements continue each year. We have a digital city hall with regards to building permits and iCity Online. And our budgeting interface is something that I'm asking council to consider so that hopefully we can look at better reporting, because I know it's difficult to understand the reporting that is created by our computer software program as it sits now. Is there any questions on information technology?
Debbie, go ahead.
Thank you. So the building permit, the cloud permit, is that something new that we would be starting to be more efficient in our building permit process?
Yes, so there's a few things. They'll be able to apply for these permits online. They'll be managed online through a software that is online and accessible. It will help moving forward for a new building inspector to come in, as well as when our CBO retires. It will be easily accessible and should be all up and running, hopefully, by the time our CBO retires and we get a new one. It is in conjunction, both those projects, budget, building permits and iCity Online, a grant has been applied for in conjunction with another municipality. So hopefully we will get those grants, and they are divided according to what we would get as a grant and what we would get charged as user fees. Now, some of those we could take a look at. Maybe we could use some of those efficiency fundings for the tax levy portion. And we can address that at any point in time, seeing that we do have funding left over.
That's kind of where I was going.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hughley.
Now,
Yes,
is
go ahead,
that an annual fee or is that a one-time fee?
That is the annual fee, and that is the one-time fee and 1 year of annual, and then there will be an annual fee moving forward.
In what ballpark would that be?
I knew you were going to ask that. I think iCity Online is about $3,000, and I think the building permit fee is about $9,000.
Okay. It's 35,000 going forward is like a half an employee almost. So it's big dollars moving forward, but that's good. Thanks.
Alan, go ahead.
We recoup that though from building permits because we can only charge in building permits what our costs are, correct?
That's correct. You can't go over.
Charlene, when do you think we'll hear about these grants? Because if we don't get the grant, there's 41,000 we come up with, right?
Well, if we move forward with those projects, I mean, that would be a council decision at that time. I know we probably won't hear about those grants until the new year, unfortunately. And whether or not council is prepared to move forward with those projects without the grant funding is, I guess, would be brought to council at the time.
Right, but maybe we could hang on to the efficiency funding to cover that cost if it doesn't come through for the
Yeah,
grants.
so the 41,860 is what you're saying. So what we anticipate would come through for grants,
If we have to, we could use that out of that
efficiency
62.5.
funding. Yeah, rather than taking, the 12,250 and the 10,290, leave that in taxation and cover the 41,860 from efficiency if not received. Is that what
Correct.
you're suggesting? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Just making a note of that.
Council okay with that? I'm just one person. Yes, okay, sounds right.
Well, we would make that decision at that time though, right? If we didn't get
Correct.
the grant, then council would make the decision at that time, right?
Right, either to go forward, cancel it, or where we're going to get the funds from. Debbie, go ahead.
Yeah, so that, I was just going to say that too, that we can make that decision at that time. If we do have 62,000, we could actually put the 62,000 towards the 35 and the 29.4 and then just wipe it off the books.
Okay. Go ahead, Charlene.
We go down to fire. So the regular bunker gear replacements continue each year. This year, we're looking at a radio system to be updated and new extrication equipment. And the fire tanker will carry over from 2021. The RFP, I believe, has gone out. And Tim anticipates that, our fire chief anticipates that we'll get the results this year. We may not actually get the fire tanker until 2023, but if that's the case, the funding from reserves as well as the expense will move into 2023. But in the event that it comes in 2022, with all of the world being at somewhat of a standstill these days, we'll see where it goes.
Alan, go ahead.
Do you know if that 98,000 in extrication equipment will now make us stand alone? We won't need our neighbors then for any extrication?
Possibly. Is the fire chief online?
Yeah, you want me, do you hear me?
Yes, please, go ahead, Tim.
Yes, that's what the idea is for us to become standalone.
That's
There
perfect.
again, when I budgeted it 2 months ago, or whenever I did the budget was 98,000. With the way things are going today, it'll probably be 120,000 by the time it all happens. It's just, yeah, it would, and I figured I would, over 3 years, we basically pay for itself with what we're paying now and on the different, with the different contracts and so on that we have. So,
Well, and it's due time that we're standalone anyway, right?
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a good move.
And the
Okay, Shirley.
revenue we would be able to generate from accidents that occur on MTO highways, then that would go directly to us rather than to the city. Is that correct? Or does it already go directly to us?
Well, it goes directly to us, but we pay some out from that. But we also have that bylaw also that it doesn't matter where it happens. We are charging
Correct.
the end user. So it's positive always.
Okay.
Good.
So transportation services. Oh dear. Let's see if we can do this again. Sorry, guys. Should have practiced this before.
No, you
I
didn't
did
raise
practice on my computer and it worked just fine. But okay, so the first one we see is Sandy Beach Road map. There was a click that I saw. Anyways, everybody can see this Sandy Beach Road.
Yes.
Okay. So there are 2 projects as well as a possible third future project during the bridge rehabilitation. Perhaps Mark can speak on this.
There we go. Sorry, my computer wouldn't unmute. So there's a couple of projects here. The first was, I'll say, on the western part of the map is the 2021 project. It was extra works that we had provided to our contractor, our paving contractor for this year. They were very hopeful that they could get the additional works complete, but we've had some discussions over the last few weeks, and we're just getting afraid of not being able to complete the extra works that we added to the contract. So that we're looking to move essentially just the repaving of the 2-kilometer section of Sandy Beach Road to 2022. We did move ahead and we replaced 5 culverts on the road. So and did some ditching, so that works is complete. So the outstanding works is essentially just the resurfacing and adding of granulars for the western portion. The eastern portion, which on the map it's labeled as RD_03 Sandy, which is our asset ID. It's one of our lowest rated roads at 15 out of 100 in our asset management system, and it continues essentially from Beeline easterly to Schultz Road, and it's a combination of some reconstruction, rehabilitation, and again trying to get the best value for our road projects as we have been over the last few years. And then there would be a final remaining section from Schultz Road to Highway 41 that we would be looking to rehabilitate in future years. Now, I did get a reply back from the County of Renfrew today that they are actually proposing to do work on the Indian River Bridge in their 2022 budget. But we're thinking that it would probably be best if we didn't do a section of road construction while they're trying to do the bridge construction, because we'd be trying to get equipment to both sides of the structure and causing some congestion and some concerns. And there's also a substantial storm drain that sort of runs from Highway 41, under Sandy Beach Road and outlets into the Indian River. And we were hoping to do some investigative works on that in 2022 to be better prepared to do that final section in 2023. So these are the 2 sections of Sandy Beach that we have proposed for next year.
Okay. Are you going to go through all the roads, Mark, or are you bringing them up one by one, Charlene?
I can go through them individually. Charlene, is that what your thought was?
I'll just keep popping them up.
Okay.
And go through them that way.
Sure. Yep. So I can speak to them. So again, this is our next project, and again, everything is sort of listed in priority, and majority is based off of what is in our asset management system. So this section of Witt Road runs from Highway 41 westerly to Beeline Road, basically to the municipal office. Cost for this project is quite high at $623,000. The reason being is that there are 2 lifts of asphalt on this road. This is one of the full load roads with no reduced spring loading. It essentially allows motorists or more long haulers, transports, et cetera, to get to, which is now cash for trash, to utilize their scale. They're one of the few public scales and that do weigh for moving companies and such. And they've got some sensors and things that are required. So we had originally sort of thought about potentially going down to a single lift of asphalt, removing the half loads. But I think that greatly impacts not just our community, but the greater. So the idea was to leave it as the full load road, and which again brings the cost up. Again, it's a mix of rehabilitation works and reconstruction works. There's a couple of large culverts to change. One which is west of Walford Road, and another which is just west of Highway 41. There's a couple of gullies on the road, and I'm sure driving through it's easy to tell where they are. We did talk about, if the cost was too high in this project, about potentially breaking it into two projects. So potentially running from Highway 41 to Walford Road, and then in 2023 doing the remaining section. It would bring the cost down considerably, but long range plans is Witt Road is a fairly long road, and there's several multi-year phases to get the work complete. So, if we do start doing it in smaller sections, it could take 5 or 6 years to get to the other end of the road, as opposed to 2 or 3. So that's our thoughts for Witt Road for next year. So the next project is Jim Sheedy Way. We did have that on the books for this year, but with paving of the rink at Stafford Park slated for 2022, the idea was that we could pave the parking lot, add or pave Jim Sheedy Way, the parking lot, and add a couple of accessible parking spots and the rink all together. And so we have the contractor in there once, and they're doing all the work together. So the next project is essentially 3 streets included in one project. Heritage Place was brought up during the 2021 budget deliberations, but the thought was to get better value and lower cost was to do the reconstruction on Heritage Place, and then to also do rehabilitation works on Old Mill Road and Ridge Drive at the same time. The condition ratings vary. Heritage Place, which again would get more of a full reconstruction, only had the condition rating of 18, and Old Mill and Ridge would be more of rehabilitation works, and their condition rating is sort of in the 32 to 33 range. So.
I drove on Heritage on Sunday. Wow. Yeah, it definitely needs it for sure.
Yes. Yeah. We had a good talk with some of the homeowners this summer, and they just talked, and they've been there since the road was built, and it was interesting with some of the construction activities and I'll say wood and stumps and such that were buried in the road just as fill when the road originally went in by the developer. So Ridge and Old Mill, we're not really too concerned, but we're it's going to be interesting to what we find when we get into Heritage Road and what's going to be in there for a road base.
Great. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, so the other projects, I'll bring them up as well. I just want to make note that, as you know, you can see that I haven't received information on OSIF or federal gas. So these projects could come forward at a later date once we have final numbers for 2021 for those projects that were funded by those, and to see what kind of funding we have left over. But these next ones Mark will speak to, and they are the next priority projects that are not currently in the capital budget, but could be if there's time and if there's funding.
So our next project is the short section of Golf Course Road, which runs from Pembroke Street West to basically Golf Course Road. The road is in very bad shape, but there's also some substantial drainage improvements that need to be completed here. There's basically on the east side of the road, there is no roadside ditch. Residents quite often annually use pumps by their own means, and they pump water across the road into the Pembroke Street West ditch. So the idea would be that we would fix up the ditching, put in some proper drainage, excuse me, to the easement, which basically runs from the northern part of the road to the Ottawa River, and so it's really two parts, some substantial drainage improvements and some golf course road works. The thought was that if the road reconstruction didn't go through, then the ditching works would be included in our operational plan. So at least we're addressing that component of it. But the road being, again, one of our lowest rated roads at 19 out of 100, it was thought that it would be beneficial to do both the road and the ditching improvements at the same time. Our next project, which is almost adjacent to the golf course road project, is Irene Street. Again, condition is 18 out of 100. It is very low. There are some major works in a few places on the road to improve the road base and to resurface. There's also remnants of 3 or 4 different storm sewer systems that do run along the road. It appears that many years ago, the homeowners were basically allowed to install their own storm sewers and were somewhat connected to each other. So we have combinations of various sizes of pipe. We have plastic pipe, there's metal pipe. There's also a storm sewer which carries water from County Road 51 or Pembroke Street West down through the area, which is sort of in front of the Pembroke Glass building, which most of you would know where that is, and it is beginning to fail and fall in. So there's some partnership and work that we need to do with the County of Renfrew on that storm drain. But there's again some major storm improvements that have to be included along with the road reconstruction for this project. And the final 2 projects, which would again be a joint venture, would be Stonyfield Road and Pleasant View Drive. Condition ratings range from 18 for a lot of heavy vehicles or heavy traffic on these roads now that the Taylor Heights subdivision is complete. The majority of the works would be rehabilitation works and not reconstruction. So costs would be significantly lower than some of our other road projects. But again, the conditions are low, and there is some priority to address this road as well.
Yeah, because that's your original pavement on Pleasant View, I think, Mark.
Yes, it's so the way that the ratings work is it's basically right now it runs from intersection to intersection. So the condition ratings now are 22, 30, and 36. So that's, let's say, it's heading from west to east. But yeah, I believe most of it is the original. There might have been a little bit of overlay work or some touch-up work, but majority is everything is original.
Jennifer, you have a question?
I thought that Roy Street was on the list for 21 or 22.
Charlene, I don't know if you'd remember the year. I think it's 23 maybe, and that's based on the water and I think some loans or debentures. Maybe Charlene, you might have that number.
I believe it's 2023. I'd have to go into the water financial plan to make sure. I know we were a little late starting with Joe Street, so we're trying to spread out a little bit of the debentures over time, because that would definitely be a project that would require a debenture for that. And I'm hoping that it'll be a 2023 project.
Could you just let me know? I have a lot of people calling me still on this one.
Okay.
Thanks, Charlene.
Yep. And I will note that we have applied for a grant for the water portion of Roy Street. We haven't heard anything back that I'm aware of, so there is potential for some funding for that as well. So,
Good, thanks, Mark. Any questions on any of these roads? Okay, seeing none. Charlene, go ahead.
Okay, so we'll go back to the list. So other projects to consider, which are currently not funded, is the 4 flagpole replacements that were suggested. Cost would be $16,000 or 0.03% in levy increase. And the radar signs for the county roads that was suggested, and that cost would be $14,000 or 0.02 levy increase. So unless council would like those added, they're currently sitting as an item to be discussed.
So I believe the flagpoles we discussed before, and it was suggested that we just add one flag to one of the existing poles. Is council fine with that and not proceed with spending $10,000 on poles? Debbie?
Yes, I don't know why, I don't remember any discussion we're saying we need to replace the 4 unless, I mean, we do have a flag policy, but we've been talking about replacing poles as opposed to adding a flag to a pole. So I'm not sure where this comes from.
All right, so we can, Mark?
Just the idea of the flag poles was actually from staff. So the poles that are in place now at the municipal office are homemade poles. We're continually having issues with the flags actually wrapping around the poles because they don't have the proper hardware on them. It's basically a pulley on the top and a piece of rope, and we tie knots in the flags to put them on the rope. So the idea was to actually have proper flag poles and not something that was essentially homemade.
Thanks, Mark. Debbie?
Well, that's embarrassing in the front of our municipal office. So I'm going to retreat and say I'm in favor of doing that.
Okay. Alan, do you have a hand up?
Yeah, Mark, can we change the hardware on the poles that are there rather than replacing everything that's there?
Yes, we can try. Because the poles are steel, we usually rent a lift every couple of years and we repaint them. They're not an aluminum pole like would be more standard, but they haven't been painted in a few years. So we could get up to the top, see what kind of hardware we could change. I could call a few of the flag manufacturers just to see what's there. I'm not sure what you can buy for parts separately, but I could look at that. Yes.
So could we hold off on that, Charlene, or do we need to know tonight?
Oh, we can hold off on that and we can bring it forward at another time.
Maybe we just remind council right now that Charlene has us as 2.7 in our operating, and right now with the numbers she has is another 1%, right, Charlene?
Yeah, 1.05.
So right now we're at about 3.75.
3.77.
If with 3.77?
Yep. So we'd be at 3.8 for the replacements. And if we did the radar signs as well, we'd be 3.82.
Okay. So why don't we just finish the rest of this page, and then council, we can go back and maybe we'll have a discussion. I'm sure Charlene is looking for as to where you want to end up, where council wants to end up with an increase this year. So maybe we just finish this page and then we'll go back and tackle a couple of those items.
Okay. So the radar signs, is there any comments for or against?
Debbie?
I'm certainly in favor of it because speeding is probably the #1 complaint that we all receive. If we can do something about it, let's do something about it.
And Mark, can you remind us what that 14 entails? 14,000?
Yeah, so I'm still doing a little bit of research. On the higher end, 14,000 would get us 2 signs. On the lower end, we can probably get 4 if we can find something a little bit more cost effective, or potentially buying multiple units, get things a little bit cheaper. But best case scenario, we're probably looking at 4 signs in various locations throughout the township. And as at least a starting point, I don't know if we would need more than that. I know some municipalities, they've actually been relocating them after a couple of years to other roads, so they're repurposing them throughout the township. So I think even if we had 3 or 4, I think that's a great number. And it's again, I agree with Reed Robinson. The number of speeding complaints that we receive at the township office is quite high, and I think a lot of our residents would be happy to see these installed.
Charlene, is there any chance they can come under efficiency funds?
Possibly. It's only a 0.02%.
Yeah, I know. It's not very much. Okay. Okay. Keep council's feeling on that. Then for the moment, do you want to include those 2 items?
We
Can I
can.
get a show of hands if you're kind of in favor of that, to include both? And then Mark could come back to say, you know, we could do the flagpoles down to 5 instead, but what's council's feelings? Any comments? Alan?
So I guess we got to realize that that's only 4 streets in our municipality. And I think the complaints we get are probably from about 30 different streets within our municipality. And like, I guess, where do you go with this? You know, if you put 4 of them up, then you're going to have all the other streets saying, well, I want one on mine. I want one on mine. And where do you draw the line? And how much money do you want to put in them? Number one. Number two, do they actually reduce speeding? I'd like to see some kind of report somewhere. There's got to be something that says, yes, they do, or they're efficient, or they're not efficient. That's a lot of money just to spend to think that it might do something.
No, for sure. And I think this question was asked to Mark last time, but I know you haven't had any time to look at it. Certainly, if council's concept is to have 10 years from now, be kind of similar to streetlights. You know, we started with a few streetlights. We had them every year until we caught up to it. But this might be something that we want to have a couple every year, or certainly we're all concerned about speed. It's probably the second complaint when you knock on somebody's door after tax increase. But Keith, go ahead. You're on mute, Keith.
Do we know if the OPP actually patrol and use radar at all in our municipality? Should we check with them to see if they do have radar, and are they using it? Or are they using our one radar board that we have when we move around from location to location?
I guess that's something we would have to ask the OPP directly. I know obviously they have radar guns. Whether they use them on municipal roads or not is unknown at this time. They obviously use them when they're speeding, when they see the speeding. I don't know that they actually set up speed traps on municipal roads.
I've heard that they do have a camera spy, or a spy camera that is not necessarily observable to the people, but they can track speeds as well with that, and they'll know the roads to watch.
Jennifer?
I can reach out to Stefan and get an answer for that if you want before we make a decision on the radar signs.
Yeah, that'd be great. Why don't we do that? You can report back. Alan?
I can tell you they do use radar, and they do use it on municipal roads. They do use it on Mud Lake Road. Trust me. I've had to.
Recently?
About 2 years ago.
Okay. Okay, so we'll have a look. Mark can get back to us on the polls, and Jennifer, maybe you can report and let Charlie know what you found out from Stefan. So at the moment, we'll leave the 2 items out.
Okay.
Until we get back the information. Okay, Capital Works, Charlene.
So the next
Culvert
is
Works, sorry.
culvert condition review. This is a carryover from 2021. Studies East End servicing system. It's a carryover from 2020. The airport fuel dispensing system is a carryover from 2019. And then we have a new trail system being purchased, the land purchase. So those are everything but the land purchase is being funded by efficiencies, and the land purchase is from capital reinvestment. That's what I have it funded from. Any questions on those?
Seeing none.
Okay. Then we go into equipment replacement, and we have the backhoe loader, which dates back to 2005. And the 1-ton truck with dump body dates to 2012. Now with the 1-ton truck body, there is possibly some development charges revenue. and I'll get that information from Lori Armstrong, the calculation, what that is. And there's no guarantees that we collect those development charges. The last development charge study included a number of projects that are supposed to be funded from development charges. So unless we have some larger developments going on, I don't know how long we're going to track these projects, but they'll eventually, I guess, come from the development charges and go into the operating or back into the reserves, that the reserves are funding the overall project as they come in. So that's my plan for those ones. The parks, the Allison Fraser, the garage is a carryover from 2018. LV Skating Trail lighting is a grant that has been approved. We're just waiting on when we can start. Timberline upgrades will occur only if grant is approved. Pleasant View Park, the court flooring and accessories, and Stafford Park rink paving, and the new swing set. We did talk about a new swing set last year that was welded. I think it's time that we replace that swing set with a new swing set. I'm pretty sure it could be the original one that when I lived in Stafford, which was a very, very long time as a child. So
It's older than I am, Charlene. Okay.
there you go. See, it was there when I was little and lived on Leach Street.
Any questions on that section? Alan?
Just a comment, Mark, the Airport Commission might be interested in that 1 ton truck. Maybe we'll talk offline.
Yep, absolutely.
So typically, I think our policy states for sales is that it does go on Gov Deals, and then everybody has the opportunity to purchase. But I will check that policy to see if it includes partners.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Debbie?
I thought we already had purchased the court flooring this year. I thought we were just waiting to install it. Or is this something totally different?
Mark?
So I'll speak to it. So, Rodson, what had happened is we did budget for some paving patchworks underneath the pad. Unfortunately, the estimate that I had originally received for the park was only in about the $30,000 range. It turns out to have all of the lines painted, to have modular net systems, and for the full size of the park that's there, we're in the range of about $50,000. So it was $20,000 more than what we had originally thought from some estimates that we had received. So I do have quotes recently from 2 companies, and so I'm comfortable at the $50,000 being able to do everything and get everything in place. We're still waiting for our contractor to do the paving repairs, but they're still committed to completing that this fall. So if everything does go ahead, we'll order the court over the winter months, and then it would basically be installed as soon as the snow was gone this year.
I think the money was coming out of reserves, whether it was this year or next year, right, Charlene?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay, Debbie? Yep. Okay. Maybe the one item, and I know we passed and discussed before, and I'm going to just jump back for a minute, was the East End servicing expansion. We really think we should, at least I do, and speaking with Alan when we went through the early budget going, is that we need to get this study going on the East End, and I don't know if that's going to come back to council before the letter goes out or not. Charlie, I don't know if we got that far with Dean, but we'll certainly bring that up. But
I know the letter had gone out before and there was no flavor for any other partners moving forward with that from the county or from the city. I think we're going to maybe send it out one more time to everybody involved and look for a deadline that if we're not going to get any support on, then we're going to go ahead and do what we can with that money. Okay.
Debbie. Yeah, go ahead.
I 100% agree. Steve, we have to get this study done so that we are ready when MTO is ready to do their rehab. We can't keep sitting on this. We need to move forward.
And that's kind of the conversation, Debbie, that we had. I agree with you 100% that we need to get this done and move forward so we know what we're doing. But we just instructed Dean to double check with the other two parties that might possibly have some interest in partnering on this and get them for a hard yes or a hard no. And then if
So we can move forward.
Hard no, then we just move forward.
Yep. Just want to bring council up to date on that anyways.
And perhaps Mark can answer this, but my understanding is the Highway 148 is in the design process right now. So we may be too late for buying into any changes that might occur with this East End servicing expansion study. Mark, do you know?
Yes, I know they've already started at their detailed design, but I haven't heard from anybody from MTO's group for quite some time, so I'm not certain that, exactly how far they are along. I don't know if the timeline is still as they had initially thought or not, but we could touch base and I don't know unless someone else from our group has been in touch.
Laurie, I know you want to jump in there.
Sorry, I apologize. Trouble unmuting there. Yeah, I think things are just a little bit slower with some of their review right at this point. But I think just to clarify as well too that the with that East End study that it's looking also at how the traffic patterns and the servicing would connect in. That's not just Highway 148, but kind of rounding out from that in that area where we're having the higher development pressure. I mean, certainly it connects back through Highway 148, but just to understand that flavor that it's that whole area at that end. So it may piece together with some of what MTO and through Parsons are looking at as well, but it scopes out a little bit more.
Thanks, Laurie. Debbie.
So I think we need to find out where MTO is at, because I don't remember us ever having a conversation saying yes or no to sidewalks, for instance. And those are things that are part of the design that MTO needed to hear from us before the final design was created. So let's find out where they're at, because I actually thought they were supposed to get back to us on some issues. But if they're waiting for us, I think that as a council, we need to make a decision around, in particular, the sidewalking of 148.
Mark, have you heard? I know you said you haven't heard from them for a while, but maybe you could contact them and set up a meeting, or at least find out what's going on with the sidewalk, et cetera. And I did ask Mark last week, and he was going to check with MTO as well. Since 148 is probably going to be delayed again. I know we were talking late 2022, early 2023, but if we're going to see any more delays, I asked Mark to check with MTO to see the possibility of streetlights, temporary streetlights at the corner of Drive and Road on 148. You see them on bridges all the time when they're working on bridges, etc. I don't know if it's possible, but if they're going to drop us back another year at least, then they can certainly at least look into that idea. So you're good with that, Mark?
Yes. Yep. I'll reach out to them and I'll bring up the sidewalks, and I'll just get an update in the project, and hopefully I can report something back to council next week at our meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Charlene.
Okay, so the next item, I did mention in the waterworks last week that we would have a project for capital, and it's new water meter digital monitoring at the 6 major meter locations that read with the city. So the usage is from the city. So it allows for remote reading from desktop anytime. That it allows for mitigation of water leaks. It sends alarms messages instantly. It's not replacing the water meters that are currently there. It's just adding a a remote reading, a digital reading capability. So again, this is something that will be moving forward, would help with regards to some of the items that our CBO currently does. And it is also health and safety, and would certainly help us understand the water usage at any point in time. We'll be able to see clearly that when and where, if there is water usage that's could be a leak, just like we experienced in the Willow Drive area this past year. We would have been notified earlier on instead of once we get a bill.
Alan?
Charlene, did we not discuss, it doesn't make any difference, it's coming out of the water reserve anyway, but did we not discuss putting that under efficiencies?
We did discuss that. My concern is if some of these other projects go ahead, we can always change it if and when those other grants that are approved, and whether or not we're going to utilize all those funds from the efficiency funding or not. I just wanted to make sure that it was earmarked that in the event that there was no further funding from efficiency, that we could take it out of water reserve if necessary.
No, that's fine, no problem.
Okay.
Okay. So currently, the levy reliant increase on capital is $60,540, which represents a 1.05 levy increase. And therefore, the overall levy impact for operating, again, is 2.72, capital 1.05. So our total levy increase is 3.77, or an additional $218,012 to the levy. Is there any concerns with regards to that levy increase?
So I guess our question tonight for direction to Charlene is, are you happy with being underneath 4%? Is there a number that people want it under 3%, or just want to get maybe thought process from some of councillors to see where we direct Charlene? Debbie?
I'm certainly content with the 3.77%, considering the cost of everything has gone up recently. And I think that being able to do what we're proposing to do here and keeping it under an increase of under 4%, I think is extremely reasonable.
Alan?
I also agree. I think we're right around where inflation is running, and like Debbie said, everything has gone up. Fuel's going to cost us a ton of money this year. Heating, electricity, and I think to be at 3.77 is a good number.
Thank you, Alan. Anybody else? Okay. So Charlene, you've got direction. We've got a couple of things to check out before our next meeting.
Okay, so for the next meeting, I'll list the summary of changes here that we've discussed and make sure all of those questions that need answered are listed here for the following meeting, and that will be the first slide of the next budget meeting moving forward. And that's all I have. So
okay, I guess we need a motion to adjourn.
Okay. So
Chris and Brian.
Okay, moved by Councillor Plow, seconded by Councillor Hughley, that the special council meeting of November 9th, 2021 be adjourned at 7:30.
All in favor? Great. Thanks very much, folks. Charlene, great job. Look forward to moving forward with this type of budget, and I think everybody's quite happy with it.
I'd certainly like to thank staff, the CIO and staff. Certainly one staff member is currently on vacation and I think zooming in from a little South Ontario. And thank everybody for all the discussions over time, and it's been very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, good night, everyone. Stay safe.
Good night.